Hello, everybody. Thanks to those who joined early. If y'all are not shy, please let me know in the chat where you're dialing in from today. I love to know. And then I think we can get started. So, welcome everybody. Hello from Illinois. Hi, Chris. Hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited for this session. We're also very, very lucky to have Veranex joining us. So before I kick it off to our speakers, there are some housekeeping notes I want to go through. So this session is being recorded and you will receive the recording within 24 hours post-event. If you don't see that, please email me at webinars@criticalstart.com and I'd be happy to assist you. Next is we love for this session to be as engaging as possible. So please use the chat for questions and comments. We love to see it. We love to interact with you. And then last but definitely not least, we are giving away a $150 dollar gift card from Amazon to one lucky attendee. And you simply enter the drawing by asking a question in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function. All right, so I'll stop talking now and I'll kick it off to Umair. Umair, please let the crowd know a little bit about yourself and get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Christy. All right. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Umair Masood. Thanks for joining us today. I am a director of product here at Critical Start. I've been with the company actually for just a couple of months. But prior to this, I was at Dragos, also leading their platform team from a product perspective. And then prior to that, I spent about 12, 13 years at a company called Rockwell Automation. And towards the end there, I was in their office of CISO, helping with their enterprise security program as the director of security strategy. And I'm really excited to be here with Joe Campbell from Veranex, so that we can talk about this interesting topic for today, MDR for outcomes.
Awesome. Thanks, Amir. For those out there in TV land, I'm Joe Campbell, VP Cybersecurity Strategy and Sales here at Veranex. A little bit about my background. So I've been in the industry for about 20 years. The core body of knowledge or the core body of my work has been helping my clients build, operationalize, and streamline their security operations practice. So have a wealth of experience working for different OEMs and different consulting organizations to really help my clients understand the value of what their tool selection is and how to streamline and realize the value of those investments as part of their organizational technology stack. So part of the intent for this the session we have here today is to really make this interactive. We definitely don't want this to be where we sit here and talk at you for 40 minutes. So I would definitely encourage any kind of questions that you may have. We really want to help to understand and know what focuses or what challenges you guys are focusing on as it relates to SOC operations and managed detection and response.
Yeah, exactly. We've got, I think, about 30 minutes or so to walk through some of these key concepts, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. But honestly, if something really starts to resonate with you all and you've got a question along the way, just don't hesitate, jump in. And I think that's kind of what we're going for, is this concept of fireside chat. Cool.
Yep. So guys, let's get started today by just talking about the current state of MDR and really why so many organizations are frustrated with what they're getting.
All right. So yeah, let's get things kicked off with really what's happening in the MDR space right now. Joe, I know that you're talking to customers like every single day. What are you really hearing?
I mean, the story really hasn't changed, right? Since the beginning of my career in this, it's the same thing, right? We're drowning in alerts. My clients have invested in different MDR services that they've made in some cases very significant investments in. And the challenge is really, what are they getting, right? So they're getting the alerts, but I like to think of that as the so what, right? So we're getting alerts, right? What does that mean? All my clients seem to be getting is just lots and lots of notifications, but nobody was really kind of solving the problem with what the intent of the MDR providers or really what the space has presented to them to consume in this capacity.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's exactly what we're seeing too. If you look at the slide, many organizations, they're really just overwhelmed by tools or the alerts those tools are producing. And they're really struggling to actually achieve the outcomes, right? As an MDR provider, really, our focus is to move beyond that. We want to move into that outcome space. not just be another notification service. What we typically have seen in the industry from MDR providers is they're telling you, hey, we saw something suspicious, and that's about it, really. And it's like, okay, hey, Mr. Customer, it's now your problem to figure out what to do about it. And honestly, having been on the other side as a customer, that's not a great feeling when that's how your MDR provider is acting, especially as a security leader. You've got concerns.
That's exactly right. And I mean, here's the thing, like the talent pool has, was non-existent to begin with, right? People had a very select, a very small group of talent to pull from. And most organizations, either they don't have the ability or the budgets to build a security team internally, so they have to partner strategically. They can't just afford to have somebody on call 24/7, for every alert. They need a partner that's actually going to, help them do something about the threats, actually deliver the R in the MDR component, as opposed to just alerting them about what's happening inside their environment.
Yeah, completely agree. And from when I really start to analyze the problem, I think I see that this type of behavior from an MDR provider, it really stems from, I think, three major problems. First, the one that we all know is tool sprawl, right? Many organizations, as I talk to them, they've accumulated just so many different types of tools over the years, and their MDR provider isn't actually helping them make sense of it all. They're all just adding another tool to the pile, really. Second is what I talked about, this notification only MDR, escalations, alerts being thrown over the fence. And, that's really not the service that our customers want to be paying for. MDR providers are supposed to be focused on reducing the burden instead of adding to the burden. And so, I think it's one of those things where if this continues, what we tend to then see is the customer has to deal with those repercussions. Ultimately, Joe, you just talked about those teams are already stressed, they're understaffed, and if the MDR provider is throwing those alerts over the fence, and your team is having to investigate, do things like performing advanced queries to resolve the alerts just to figure out whether something is real or not. That's not really sustainable.
It's not, right? And I mean, the challenge with every organization, whether they build a SOC team internally or they partner strategically, is to find the signal in the noise, right? You don't want to just send a bunch of alerts or escalations to somebody and then have your team, however many headcount, or maybe somebody that's wearing multiple hats, send them down a rabbit hole while they try to determine the validity of what a threat is. The industry needs a cleaner approach to delivering value, right? It's not enough just to say that we're monitoring you 24/7. And what does that actually mean, right? You have, just like the ADT commercial, we see what you're doing and we're going to send you an alert or an escalation. Where is the outcome, right? Where is the response to that? What are we trying to accomplish, and how do we actually measure, by real metrics, what success looks like for you?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, that's what we're really here to talk about today. Moving from this like notification only model to really an outcome based model where you actually start to see and measure the value you're getting from MDR.
That's exactly right. So let's talk about what response means, because I think that's where a lot of the confusion and the frustration in the industry is, right? You look at the acronyms of where we've evolved from and where we are now, right? I mean, initially it was co-manage, and then it was you have an MSSP, and now you have an MDR, and now there's another acronym out there in terms of XDR, right? So let's actually talk about, not just the first component of whatever the new acronyms are, but actually what the R means, right? How are companies actually benefiting from the value of partnering strategically with organizations like Critical Start?
Yeah, and I think honestly, the industry hasn't really done a great job of defining that response word. So yeah, I think for me, I want to be pretty clear. I want to be very clear about what we mean when we say response at Critical Start. So response to us means active involvement. It means containment, eradication, and prevention, right? Not only just notification and escalation. Although, yeah, there are some cases I'd say where, that's all that's needed. But when we detect a threat, we don't want to send you a ticket. We don't want to just throw it over the fence and then wish you good luck. We want to take action.
And that's backed by a real commitment, right? Not just, marketing language or here's another acronym from you, right? So
Oh,
that
yeah.
actually means something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of that second component is like, okay, we're going to take action, but we want to do it within a defined set of interval. So what we have is a 60-minute SLA for all threats. And what that means is within 60 minutes of detecting a threat, we've ideally investigated it, we've determined if it's real, and we've ultimately taken action to contain and ideally remediate it.
So, and I want to emphasize that for everybody that's joining us here, right? This isn't just for critical or high severity alerts. This is for all of the threat alerts that you're getting that Critical Start is going to be producing for you. Because what I've learned is that medium and low severity alerts can still be critical to your organization, right? And an attacker doesn't always come in with guns blazing, right? Sometimes they're low and slow. Dwell time is something that maybe a lot of organizations have moved away from or forgot from. So, sometimes the threat actors, depending on their TTP or what it is they're trying to accomplish, they're very patient, right? That's the insidious threats that are in there that are underlying that have used, techniques where maybe they've managed to hijack a profile or a user identity. At that point, they're no longer hacking, right? They're living off the land is what it's called in this space, right? So, depending on how that threat actor is moving in a way that's not necessarily creating alerts, those low or those low severity or medium severity alerts should still have, some level of significance as part of your IR handling and your triage process, because sometimes they can be early warning signs of something that's actually much bigger that's on the horizon for you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when we talk about our SLAs, we're talking about all alerts. It's because of that exact reason you just mentioned, Joe, right? And so I just want to peel back the curtain a little bit. Essentially, the way we accomplish this kind of 60-minute SLA consistently, it's really through a combination of the tools that we have and the people and the team that we've developed, right? So it's a combination of AI, algorithms, machine learning, plus human expertise. And the moniker we really like to use here is AI accelerated, but human validated, right? That's the way we like to really service our customers. And so essentially the way we look to kind of accomplish that is through a couple of different things. One of them is through the use of what we call alert typing and action typing. Essentially, our goal is to normalize alerts and their attributes across all the vendor tools with the help of this framework called OCSF, Open Source Cybersecurity Framework. What this does is it helps our analysts make sense of alerts across the disparate tools that you've got. And then our algorithms help categorize and prioritize alerts based on patterns we've seen across thousands of customers, right? And finally, what then our analysts can start to leverage is what we internally call SOC AI. And what that does is it presents our analysts essentially with a dossier of, hey, for this alert, what occurred, what's the observed activity, what's the risk, and then it also pulls things like additional alerts or playbooks that could be relevant. And then really that's where the human takes over, right? A lot of that kind of menial work of aggregating the data in one place is what we leverage things like AI for. And then the human analysts, really start to kind of dig into and validate everything and take appropriate response actions that may be needed to contain and ultimately eradicate a threat.
That's great. So it's not just AI running wild, making auto decisioning processes, right, without any oversight. It's more so, your team using, your proprietary AI to help accelerate the process, serving as a force multiplier. But they're still in a loop to help, validate and make sure that they're making the right calls from what Critical Start is solving for you as an organization, right? So for those of you out there in the audience, it's something that you may hear. If you haven't heard, let me be the first to say it. But with respect to IR handling, this is known as human in the loop specifically. So be on the lookout, anytime you're working or in the space with other partners that are using AI in its various forms, it's definitely that level of oversight that you need, especially with something that's as critical as your SOC operations.
Yep, completely agree. Awesome. All right. So, Joe, one of the things I know that you deal with at Veranext are really customers who are just kind of tired of being sold more tools. They've already got a stack of security products, and now another vendor comes in and says, hey, you need our tool too. How do you really start to approach that type of conversation?
Let's say that is a very big pain point, right? Tool rationalization, doing more with less. Everybody is dealing with it, right? And honestly, it's one of the reasons that Critical Start, the partnership that we have here at Veranext, really works so well for us. because our approach isn't, rip and replace, right? We believe in introducing disruption in a healthy way. And, the takeaway is it helps us maximize what your current investments are, as we mentioned earlier, and you heard me say this, to help you find the signal from the noise inside your environment.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that's our philosophy as well, really. Let's instead focus on helping you maximize your existing security investments. Most organizations, what we found is that they've got good tools already. They've got EDR, they've got the firewalls, they've got SIMs. And typically the problem isn't the tools. It's really that nobody's operationalizing them effectively.
Yep.
That's what we're really finding.
That's exactly right. A lot of organizations have a lot of shelfware, right? Where maybe they have implementations that are partially baked, and part of what we can do, and part of the value of Critical Start is helping those organizations really understand the value of what their current investment is. Maybe it's understanding, do we need to turn on another module to get some additional fidelity or clarity in terms of what's happening, right? So instead of forcing replacements, Critical Start integrates with, what our clients existing or already own inside their environment to really help make those tools work better for you.
Yeah. And I think this is a great place really to bring up the Microsoft Defender XDR stack. A lot of our joint customers I know are standardizing on Microsoft for security. And really, I think that's where our MDR offering is purpose built to shine, right? We deliver really substantial coverage, unified coverage across the Microsoft Defender stack with the ability to investigate and resolve, as we mentioned, all alerts, not just the critical ones, with the same standard contractual SLAs, 60-minute MTTR on all alerts. And really all of our SOC analysts are Microsoft certified. So they can really start to help you with not just responding to those alerts, but also, as we talked about earlier, operationalizing what you already own. And so you really start to accelerate your ability to get the outcomes that you want. And really, the other thing to note here with regards to Microsoft is that our integration with Microsoft is really not just kind of an ingestion one way; it's really bi-directional. And so we're not just pulling in the alerts, but the bi-directionality really helps us with being able to, with your prior consent, of course, launch response actions from within our platform to do things like isolate a host directly, from our platform. And that can really start to help you save significant amount of time when it comes to dealing with the threat, especially containing it and making sure that that blast radius isn't expanding beyond being able to kind of be manageable. And so one of the things that we leverage from a platform and a core capability perspective, and how we accomplish this is through our ability to reduce the noise, right? Reducing false positives. And we'll talk a little bit about this more, but we do this via something called Trusted Behavior Registry, TBR. It's really what I would call kind of our main weapon in making sure we have the ability to reduce that noise, and have our SOC analysts investigate only what matters so that we can then take action on actual threats. And I know we're going to talk about it more later on, but the brass tacks of it is that within the first 4 to 6 weeks of onboarding, what we found in working with customers, that we can reduce up to 99% of the false positives from a customer's environment on the Microsoft security stack. And that's all with the help of this TBR capability. And we have really good performance on other vendor tools as well. But I think the bottom line is that ultimately our focus as an MDR helps you maximize your investment in Microsoft security products.
Yep. No, that's fantastic, Omer. So I'm seeing this more and more and more, right? Where organizations are, good, better, and different, being forced or electing to consolidate on the Microsoft stack, whether it's an E3 or an E5. And one of the big ways that Verinext and Critical Start can partner together is the professional services that Verinext offers to handle the complex Microsoft work that really trips teams up a lot of times. We do that through a combination of readiness assessments, architecture review, Sentinel, Azure Sentinel, and deployment, integration, policy design, detection, tuning, and response. Ongoing configuration governance, including licensing across your E3 or an E5, as well as your Defender SKUs. We really help, help our clients get off to a solid foundation with respect to, their Microsoft deployment to help them optimize that so that Critical Start can respond with speed and detection. That's a big challenge that we're seeing a lot of positive feedback from among our client base. And really what that means for your organizations, and just to echo what Amir was saying, is it just means faster onboarding, fewer misconfigurations, better detection efficacy, smoother operations post go live. You get to keep your Microsoft tools. For a lot of organizations, it's partnering with an MDR provider that can actually develop intellectual property that's specific to your organization, not just, trust us and, we're not really going to tell you how the sausage is made, right? Here are the inputs, here are the outputs. Critical Start does this in a way that's transparent, that helps your organization be better prepared for tomorrow than you were today. And again, we talked about this earlier, but beyond just leveraging those existing investments, finding the signal from the noise and making sure that you have, alert notifications and SLAs that deliver meaningful value of your technology investments.
Exactly. Yeah. So more tools doesn't always equal better security outcomes, but really the smarter use of the tools you have, that's what ultimately drives results. Cool.
So let's talk. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right, so let's talk about some of the biggest frustrations that we're hearing from our customers, and everybody's heard this, but false positives, right? Sending people down a rabbit hole, really, taking the time that my team has to focus on other things when they should really be focusing on something that's meaningful and specific, right? Getting escalations that have a high degree of fidelity, right? So how big is this? Is this the problem that you guys are seeing in your industry?
Yeah, it's massive, right? False positives, I'd say, are the number one contributor to alert fatigue. Your security team gets so many of these, and they turn out to be nothing that really you can do, and you've got to figure out a way to really reduce that noise and start to tune it out. And ultimately, as you're doing that and you're getting kind of cycles spun up on these really low value alerts, that's when possibly the real threats can really start to slip through.
That's exactly right. One of the challenges, organizations, they don't want to be have escalations that are false positives. However, at the same time, I think it's helpful to have a level of tuning that makes sense for your organization because, at some point, you will start treating alerts like spam if you have a high degree of false positives, right? And then you start to question the value of your MDR partner. Eventually, it becomes the boy who cries wolf. And then you really start to, again, start to really question the relationship and is what you're getting from those partners, is that real, right? Is this something that we need to really spend some time with? So, tell me a little bit about how that works, right? With Critical Start.
Yeah, so really we've built two capabilities to address this. The first, as I mentioned before, is our Trusted Behavior Registry, TBR. This is this massive knowledge base that really records expected known good behavior across your environment.
So it baselines and learns what normal looks like for your organization?
Exactly. So once we know what normal looks like, we can start to then filter out those redundant alerts. And that's how we really consistently reduce alert fatigue while being able to meet those time to detect, time to resolution SLAs. Essentially, what I'd say is like TBR is a human curated catalog of these known good behaviors. It's really a corpus of just around 100,000 or so filters and playbooks that we built. And we've been building these out, in that TBR catalog for quite some time across numerous different security tools. And our analysts are constantly updating and tweaking the TBR so that we can ensure it's always staying up to date. And Joe, to your point earlier, we don't just add filters for things we see across all environments. Our SOC analysts actually build out custom TBRs for your organization. So like those super special, like contextual things that may only be happening in your environment. Like an example of this was like, I remember seeing a backup of a specific server that has a custom built application on it that just like happens to run some code from Mimikatz and is then caught by your Palo once a month when the backups are occurring, right? Like those type of instances, we have the ability to really, ensure they're not kicking off emergency escalations, emergency responses.
Yep. I mean, this is huge, right? For, of course, for our customers and our clients, it really means that they're not getting bombarded with alerts from things that are perfectly normal for their business. Every organization has some, deviation from what good looks like, right? So it's partnering with an organization using your trusted behavior registry to help understand what good looks like for our organization and filter through that and then provide escalations for things that are actually meaningful for what your team needs to spend time on from an incident response perspective.
Yeah, I think, yeah, TBR is huge. I think the other key point for us is that we're not just relying on that filtering and automation to make those decisions. That's kind of where our second capability comes in, enhanced threat detection through our human-driven expertise, what we call our cyber research unit. And really, these are these experienced security analysts. They're constantly reviewing alerts, looking for patterns, catching things that automation might miss, consuming things like threat intelligence, staying up to date via our threat intelligence team that we've got internally. Because ultimately, right, attackers are creative, right? And they're constantly evolving their techniques. They're leveraging new tools, things like AI. And so you do need to be able to have human expertise in the loop.
It's that combination of people, processes, and technologies again, and then leveraging AI to help reduce the noise and speed up that process, right? Every organization is focused on, decreasing the time to detect and the effort to respond. And part of that comes in conjunction with making sure that you have, timely awareness of what's happening inside your environment, and then in sending those alerts to our clients with a very high level of fidelity to make sure that they understand, what they're focusing on, and then to help catch the sophisticated threats that require critical thinking and experience.
Yep. Yeah. And I think ultimately the result is you get fewer false positives, meaning you have less alert fatigue. Your team can actually start to focus on what matters to your business. And when we do alert you to something, it's real, right? And oh, by the way, based on how we define response, that it's already being handled as well. So, yeah.
Great. So if you're invested in Microsoft security, this partnership with Critical Start is built for you. So Verinex designs and implements the Microsoft stack from Sentinel to Defender to Entra, and then make sure that it's tuned for your environment and your business policies. Then Critical Start can take that telemetry, monitor it, and own it 24/7. So nobody likes to get called at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, but Critical Start will take on the first levels of response and make sure that if we do have to wake somebody up, their SOC has done the investigation, the containment, and then the resolution with a clear SLA so that, when they do, either call you, depending on, the decision tree or whatever you partner with them on and how you want to be alerted, or maybe you decide that it's better that this can wait. Let's go ahead and, bring this or put this in somebody's inbox on, Monday morning at 9 a.m. When Verinex is at the table translating these incidents into specific improvements and hardening steps, we can certainly, see the value and the partnership here that Critical Start and Microsoft can bring to bear.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, our SOC analysts are deeply experienced across Defender and Sentinel. We have that ability to normalize the signals that are coming from the Microsoft Security Stack into Core, via that TBR, and plus our enhanced human detection to catch additional and more novel threats as well. And ultimately, what we found is customers see more value from this approach. They see those fewer false positives, faster time to containment, and ultimately better use of the investments they've already made, in the Microsoft space, E5, Defender, Sentinel, combination of such as well.
Verinex professional services can accelerate that time to value, right? Custom KQL analytics, Sentinel data connectors, logic apps and automation, Defender policies as that relates to ASR rules, device control, identity protections, and then, to go down the path of role-based access controls that actually help with your operating model. We lock this into a shared success plan that we do quarterly reviews with our clients that help understand, which KPIs we built together to help understand what success looks like for you. Focusing on some things that I'm sure you're familiar with: mean time to detect, mean time to respond, alert volume reduction, tuning the backlog burn down, and then, how your organization is covered, or what your organization's coverage is as it relates to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then we can help make specific suggestions or policies or help you with identifying specific tools that can help close that gap where you may have gaps with respect to detection logic and MITRE.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we've talked about response. We've talked about reducing false positives. We talked about the partnership as well. Now let's just spend a little bit more time on another word, trust, because at the end of the day, you're really trusting us to protect your business. Joe, how do we build that trust?
I think trust is paramount, right? And trust comes with transparency, especially with something as critical as this. And, Mar, this is something that, Critical Start does really, really well, right? In terms of removing that black box. You heard me mention this earlier, right? Where here are the inputs, here are the outputs. Just trust us. Critical Start is transparent in terms of how they're going about event prosecution, which is not really something you get with a lot of other MDR partners. Clients that we work with are starving for information. They want to help at least with the visibility and the transparency component, not only to understand what's happening with their environment, but, should they have the opportunity or the impetus to help their team learn about this so that they are, ultimately becoming better stewards of their environment from a security perspective.
Yeah, and for us at Critical Start, just this like radical transparency is one of our core principles. We do not want to see our customers ever needing to wonder, hey, what is my MDR provider doing right now? And so the way we think about it is you should be able to see exactly what we're monitoring, what alerts we're investigating, what actions we're taking.
And this is all delivered through the core platform, right?
Yeah, exactly. The core platform, if you log in, it gives you visibility into everything we're doing, right? You can see every alert, every investigation, every response action. You can even see our SLA performance in the platform in real time. So there's really no mystery, no black box, just this kind of complete radical transparency.
That's fantastic. And one of the things that I really, really appreciate that Critical Start does well is the mobile SOC app. So it's kind of like a CISO dashboard in your pocket, right? Security doesn't just happen during business hours. Most of us are rarely ever more than 3 feet away from our phone. And, threats can happen at any time, right? With your mobile SOC app, you've got full parity with what the web platform has to offer, and it's right there in the palm of your hand.
Yeah, that's right. That real-time visibility and the ability to take actions from anywhere. If you're traveling, if you're at home, if you're in a meeting, and you can, still see what's happening in your environment. You can see what we're up to. You can see what we've been communicating to you, what we've escalated to you, and maybe what you need to respond to as well to get us, to take that next step to contain, eradicate a threat. Really, I love it when I hear from customers and they tell me stories about how like they've been using mobile SOC and how it like really saved their butts. For example, when they're on an offsite and don't have access to their computers and they need to be able to give authorization for a specific response, to a critical asset in their environment.
Yep. It's that real-time visibility, I think, is critical for reducing attacker dwell time. And you hit the nail on the head, right? That the faster you know about a threat, the faster you can respond or give Critical Start the approval to respond. And then, in that case, it's you're mitigating your damage, right? The faster you know, the less time the attacker has to take action inside your environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then really beyond the technology, there's the service partnership approach, right? There's we don't just want to throw technology at you and then walk away. We want to assign you a dedicated team that's going to work with you.
So you get an onboarding project manager, a customer success manager, and an advisory SOC analyst that's specific to your organization. Can you, as part of the onboarding, just to be clear, right? So can you explain what the advisory SOC analyst does? Is
Yeah.
that unique or, help me
Yeah,
understand?
sure. No, I think the ASA, as we call it, advisory stock analyst, it's a new capability, and essentially it's an extension of your team, right? Think of it as the senior analyst from our cyber research unit that I mentioned earlier, who really gets to sit down and know your environment deeply. They look to then understand your business, your risk profile, your security goals, and then they can start to provide you more strategic guidance and do things like really help with threat hunting, and even assist in things like incident resource planning.
Yep, that's fantastic. So it's not just, we're monitoring you and we'll respond if something happens, right? So we're actively partnering with you to help improve your security posture and really become an extension of your team.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is what really starts to then deepen that partnership and kind of start to create more strategic alignment between Critical Start and our partners and our customers, right? We're not just a vendor providing a service to you. We're a partner invested in your success.
And that to me is what builds trust, right? The transparency in technology, the real-time visibility, and that partnership approach that you have, working together towards the same goal. I think that is critical and paramount to everyone's mutual success.
All right. So as we wrap up the presentation portion and get ready for some questions here, I want to get back to the core theme, outcomes and accountability, real quick.
So, and I think this is important because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, right? You're not buying an MDR because you want more alerts or more reports. You're buying an MDR partner because you want outcomes, right? You want things that are specific and meaningful to your organization. You want to be protected. You want threats stopped, and you want to be able to sleep at night knowing that your business is secure.
Yeah, and that's what we're really committing to. Real measurable outcomes, not we're just monitoring you, we've detected some stuff, but really instead we stopped the threats, we protected your business. And oh, by the way, here's the proof of that.
Right. And accountability means that you guys own those results. If something goes wrong, we don't point fingers, we don't hide behind the fine print. We take accountability and responsibility, and we want to make sure we fix it in a meaningful way to your organization.
Yeah, and we measure everything so that you can hold us accountable. You can see our response times, as I mentioned, our resolution times, our SLA performance, right in the core platform. It's all front and center. If we're not meeting commitments, you'll know, and we'll make sure we try to make it right.
No, that's great to know, right? And from Veronext's perspective, for those on the line, right, we are accountable too. It's not just we're the middleman where we, decide and introduce you to Critical Start, then disappear. We are your partner through this journey. If you have concerns, if you need help, if you want to help optimize the service, we're here for you, right? You should consider not just myself, but all the architects that I work with directly as extensions of your team, as ungated resources. They can have conversations that run the gamut, whether it's, not just MDR, but all the other aspects from your security organization, from on-prem or terrestrial to cloud assets. We have a team of network architects and resources that can help you solve problems, from edge to endpoint. So definitely consider us an extension of your team and a resource even beyond the capacity of Critical Start.
Okay, yeah. So just to recap, what are the outcomes we're committing to? One, threats resolved in minutes, not hours or days. That's number one. Second, minimal disruption to your business. And third, a security team. So your team, so that really your staff can focus on strategic initiatives, your business, instead of having to firefight alerts and configurations of security tools all day.
Yep. And that's what we're here to deliver on, right? That's what this partnership is built on, your outcomes, our accountability, and our mutual success.
Okay, great. So with that, I want to really open it up to the audience. We've got about 10 minutes or so for questions. And I really want to dive into these. I think I've seen a few of them coming in already. Before that, I'll let Christy kick off a poll, and I will open up the questions panel here.
Thanks, Umair. Everybody, you're going to see a pop-up window launching about now. Feel free to let us know if you'd like to hear more. We're happy to connect with you offline, reach out to you after the event. So just, submit the poll, and we'd love to get your responses. Thank you. And Umair, I think you can jump straight into questions.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I've got a question here that came in. Is success related to how well it integrates with other tools like SIM or EDR? That's kind of the first question. So yeah, my commentary is really there's a ton of tools, as we talked about, out there. And ultimately, the outcomes are what define success. If we're able to deliver on the outcomes of essentially meeting and containing and then focusing on the alerts that matter, and then containing and eradicating threats as they pop up, you can actually achieve that success with many different types of tools. And our core platform allows us to do that ingestion, right? It allows us to pull in EDR alerts. It allows us to pull in network security related tool alerts like firewalls, et cetera, and even alerts from SIM. So I think, ultimately the way I see it is work with us, with Veronext and Critical Start, And we can help you come up with a strategy that really starts to define what success could mean and really help you get towards delivering on the outcomes that we just covered in the talk today.
I think something, I mean, you bring up a good point too, right? Obviously, the more visibility we have in your environment, the better off we are, right? In terms of, understanding actually what's happening, what's pervasive in your environment, but the ability to add additional context to the threat detection and investigation. A lot of organizations are strewn, potentially between multiple SIM solutions or multiple log aggregation solutions. Part of what we can do is do that log source validation and tuning and configuration, making sure that we're actually seeing what we need to see from those log sources. And then, decide, does it make sense to send something that, may not really add a lot of value from a security context perspective, but maybe is a nice to have from a visibility aspect. We can definitely help you go through and understand, what you have, maybe what you should be sending that you're not, or what you are sending that maybe we could deprioritize a little bit. Again, part of the benefit of this solution is understanding and taking an exhaustive look at what telemetry that you have and really maximizing the value of those investments.
Yeah, and I think so. There's another question in here that's related, which is it possible to do away with SIM or IDS, NDS technologies, or reduce the size of my security operations? You want to take that one, Joe?
So I think that it depends, right? Some organizations have a compliance requirement where you need that log retention component, where usually a SIM is kind of the gold standard. So, sometimes depending on what your SIM solution is, we definitely want to understand, what subject, or I should say, what compliance framework you're beholden to. Most organizations have, PCI can have a compliant or retention requirement of up to 60 months. If you're one of those organizations where you don't have or you're not subject to a compliance requirement, I generally like to recommend 13 months of log retention, where we structure that maybe in 90 days hot and the rest of it in cold or iceberg storage, so that we can rehydrate or reconstitute, any historical telemetry from your environment. Because one of the things that we talked about was dwell time and the low and slow events, right? Where if you have somebody that's maybe hiding in your environment that's not making a lot of noise, this gives us additional context as we go through and maybe do a threat hunt that's beyond the boundaries of 90 days, so that when we can send an alert or an escalation to you, you actually have an understanding with a high degree of confidence that this threat has been identified and eradicated. As it relates to different types of technology investments, you mentioned IDS and things of that nature, right? So in my opinion, and I think this is generally the consensus among the industry, is having an IDS or an additional inspection layer at the edge of your environment, or depending on how your network is structured, maybe you have an IDS IPS that's sitting passively somewhere else in your environment as well. I think that provides a tremendous amount of information, whether it's detection at the edge or detection, when I say detection at the edge, I mean from north to south, or if you've got an IDS deployed somewhere in your environment that's maybe monitoring east to west. I think that provides a significant amount of visibility. Some organizations may choose to go down the path of an actual NDR solution, a network detection response solution, in place of an IDS. Again, these are all conversations that we can have, but we definitely want to understand and have a bigger discussion as it relates to what your environmental topography looks like and the different types of security investments and telemetry that we're collecting to be able to produce those alert escalations to you.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. There's one more question here, and then I'll move to the chat and see if there's anything in there. Isn't taking action risky if it turns out to be a false positive? I can take this one on. Yeah, I think when we look at the way you onboard a customer and the way we work with them, that's kind of one of our first areas of focus, is really to understand first and foremost, what is that level of false positives that are coming in. That's one of the main reasons why we developed the TBR, so that we can really start to reduce the false positive rate. The second thing is, when it comes to taking action and response actions, we take a very collaborative approach. We have the ability to, on a pretty granular basis, work with our customers to define custom rules of engagement. And so customers can tell us, hey, look, these set of assets, maybe servers, databases, et cetera, these are pretty low criticality. And if you see a specific type of threat on these type of assets, we want you to just go ahead and take an action. But maybe there's a subset of assets, like my CEO's laptop, or a critical server that services a critical application in my environment. For those specifically, I don't want you to immediately take that action. Instead, I want you to suggest the action that you're about to take to me, and then let me make that call. That's what I'm talking about when I say these custom rules of engagement. And so we're able to kind of develop that and really codify that inside of our platform. So again, you've got transparency around what are the actions that we're allowed to take and what are the actions that we're not allowed to take. And to some extent, those are things that are going to grow over time. And we usually take a kind of crawl, walk, run approach as we're developing those response actions, those approved rules of engagement with you all. And that's really the way we see being able to drive kind of risk out of that the action taking, especially in the midst of false positives.
That's right. I mean, it's interesting too, and I touched on this earlier, right? But the more telemetry that Critical Start is seeing, the higher level of fidelity the alerts become to you, right? So maybe if you've got, to use an example, maybe you've just got firewall alerts and maybe you're using something like legacy antivirus, right? You're really kind of limited in terms of the context that they can do the threat investigation. To use the example from the question earlier, right? Maybe we're seeing a firewall alert. Maybe we have the source and destination IP. Maybe we're getting additional context from your IDS IPS. Maybe we have additional telemetry that's coming from your Active Directory or your DNS in conjunction with what we're seeing from your Defender P2, or maybe you're using a solution like SentinelOne or CrowdStrike, right? The more bits of information that you have, the higher degree of confidence you're eventually going to have with the alerts that are being escalated to you. And then the ability for you to take action or to have Critical Start take action on your behalf, you become more and more comfortable with that relationship, right? So, again, this is a discussion that we talked about earlier in terms of understanding what technology investments you have, how that's mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and then be able to understand, depending on those technology investments, the type of threats that you're going to be able to build, alert models and increase the fidelity of those escalations for you, so that you are confident in the ability either to take action on your own volition or to have Critical Start take action on their own behalf.
Great. Okay, so I believe that is it for questions. And if you guys, I'll just put out one last call for any questions. Feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A. Other than that, if I don't see any come in for the next 20 seconds here, we can wrap up. Yeah, looks like we answered all the questions. Great. Okay. So yeah, with that, I would like to close out the webinar for today. Thank you, Joe, for attending, and thanks for partnering with me on this awesome fireside chat. Appreciate it. And thank you all. Thank you to the audience for attending. And the recording should be posted as well. But I would like to say thank you and hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
That sounds good. Thanks, Umair. Thanks to the Critical Start team, and thanks for those in our audience that shared their afternoon with us. We definitely appreciate your attention and looking forward to hearing from you.